This. All right. So, Ed, thank you for joining us here. And this is our next edition of 10 Presidents in 10 Minutes. And I'm lucky to have Ed Bolen. Clearly, we are working from the uniform, the same shirt color uniform here today. But for all of our aircraft owners and charter clients that don't know who Ed is, hopefully you do. But Ed is the president of NBAA and certainly one of the leading organizations that represents the aviation interests in the country and in the world, and is really well connected. And as I'm lucky to say, and all these other ones, Ed, I've considered a friend for a long time and is a great leader in the industry. Ed's been doing the NBAA thing for over 15 years now and is incredibly well connected, not only in Washington, but again, in all the aviation circles. So it's nice to be able to have you on the interview here with us, Ed. Thank you for your time.
Well, it's great to be here, Andy. And you mentioned that we've known each other for a long time, and that goes back all the way to my relationship with your father. Of course, I've toured your facilities. I know the remarkable history that you and your family have there. So it's a real honor to have a chance to talk with you and your many clients.
Well, no, I really appreciate it. I know they will too. So, what I wanted to ask you, and you're in such a unique position being so integrated in so many different things in aviation, you probably have a vantage point to assess or maybe share with our clients. How do you see this whole COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, how do you see this impacting the different places kind of throughout aviation? I mean, the places that we wind up feeling, but from maybe a global aviation perspective, how do you see it happening?
Well, first of all, Andy, it's very difficult to see how COVID-19 will play out because we've never seen anything like it before. This is the first great pandemic of our lifetime, first one our country or the world has faced in over 100 years. So it's been said many times, we're in uncharted territory. Having said that, it's obviously impacting all of us in a magnitude of ways. Quarantines, self-isolation, travel restrictions, and so forth. But in every challenge, there are opportunities. And I think the opportunity for us is to get the message out that we have had for a long time. And that is that business aviation provides safe, reliable, flexible transportation. You can go to 3 cities in one day instead of 1 city in 3 days. You can do productive work en route. You can move products that may be too fragile to go in a cargo hold or too large to go in an overhead bin. So business aviation is a unique travel option. It's often the best mode of transportation. What we're seeing increasingly in a COVID world is that it is the only form of transportation. As you and I have discussed, we've seen that commercial flights have had to pull out of some cities. Frequencies are down. Traveling by automobile can be challenging because you've got to find hotels and food along the way. And so I think, Andy, one of the great changes that'll take place is that business aviation, which is normally kind of a trailing indicator of a recovery, may be a leading indicator of a recovery. Because as people get ready to go, again, they may find business aviation is the only way to go there.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but maybe going along those same lines, are you seeing local communities? So there's a lot of communities and a lot of people in the past that have really demonized what we wind up doing. And of course, we've always heard it's the mode of transportation for the fat cats and all the rest of that. So I think we've passed up those hurdles. But have you been seeing, or have you heard anecdotally or factually some communities now coming out of the woodwork going, holy cow, the airlines aren't serving the needs of our community members? Are they trying to engage with NBAA and the GA community, trying to figure out how to get more GA business into their communities?
Well, Andy, we've always been kind of defined by what we're not. And so you've seen a lot of press and others try to demonize our industry based on caricatures that are really at odds with the reality of what business aviation is. I mean, we've talked often about business aviation meaning jobs economic development, helping companies be competitive, always underscoring our humanitarian flights. And so, unlike some of the sizzle and sensationalistic stories that we've seen, the reality is most communities and most community leaders have appreciated business aviation and general aviation for who we are and what we do. That's why we've been very fortunate in having a majority of the members of Congress be part of the General Aviation Caucus. But I do think in these times when you kind of drill down and say, what's important to me? And if you're a mayor, if you're a city leader, if you're someone who cares about jobs and economic development, then inevitably you're going to care about your airport, and you're going to want to be able to facilitate trade and commerce. And as we said, increasingly that means general aviation. People are either flying themselves, they're chartering aircraft, they're looking at aircraft ownership, and we're recognizing this is a great way to move around the country. And again, it's safe, it's secure, it's flexible, and there's just so many benefits. And I think that's what's coming to the floor.
Yeah, no question about it. And you had alluded to Congress and how a lot of the members of Congress look at GA and things along those lines. And maybe we can extend that a little bit to the regulators and the things that are happening there. I mean, one of NBAA's fundamental tenets is really to represent the industry out on the Hill, help promote change and things along those lines. Well, you know better than anybody that change with the FAA and the TSA, it's like moving molasses in winter. However, over these last 3 months, it's been crazy. I mean, the FAA and the regulators have been forced to change and change pretty rapidly. So, can you share with us maybe some of the things you're hearing, how not the TSA, but the regulators in general? I mean, how are they looking at things? How are they adjusting? How are they thinking about the COVID-19 and the post-COVID-19 environment? And maybe just your personal opinions are, could this be an opportunity that's teaching the regulators how to do things faster in a responsible way, or how are they approaching all these things?
Well, Andy, let me begin by saying just enormous respect to the FAA and for the way they have approached this challenge. They have kept us flying. They have kept us safe. And in some cases, that has been despite the fact that we have been operating in ATC 0 conditions. Mm-hmm. The air traffic controllers are not immune to COVID-19, and that has impacted us in profound ways. And yet, our industry and the FAA particularly is very good at alternative planning, preparedness, all of that. And so what we've been able to see is that we have been able to operate the airplanes, even with ATC 0 environments. We've been able to move forward with regulatory flexibility, and that includes the extensions for proficiency flights, extensions for medical. So I think that has been very impressive. And I just feel that what I'm seeing kind of across the board within the FAA is a commitment to get the job done. That's both in the near term and as we go forward. I was on a conference call that the FAA Administrator Steve Dixon participated in on Friday, and we talked about next gen. How do we move forward on the next gen air traffic control system? And he was very forthcoming that we don't want to delay it, stop it, pause it. This is a time when we want to accelerate it. And I think that's an exciting opportunity that as we have capacity, it might be a good opportunity to bring in some of the new operational models. We're certainly operating with increased equipage with ADS-B. And so I think there's room to move forward. And another area where the FAA has moved forward pretty sharply in the last year, as you know, is that privacy is is a big issue. It's something we have been pushing for a long time. As we go to ADS-B operations, no one should have to give up their right to privacy. And the FAA come forward with their new PIA and so forth. So overall, very high marks to the FAA over the past year, but particularly in the COVID environment.
Yeah, and if I can just echo and maybe just explain something to the extent there's any of the people that view this that don't understand it, you know, ATC 0, which is what Ed had described as a situation where a tower is unexpectedly closed, so it's not being manned, and the FAA has those contingency plans in place. And there's something that we haven't seen as an industry or seen very frequently, and that happened on I'll say a regular basis. I mean, it happened at Midway. It happened, I think, in San Jose, and it was caused by the pandemic. And I agree with you, Ed. The fact that the FAA did accommodate and allow some extensions, all within the parameters of safety. So we're not compromising safety, but the FAA does deserve a lot of credit to keep things going, or for what they've done to keep things going for all of us, you know, in our industry. And maybe we'll kind of, I'll have two questions to wind things down, because again, we're trying to keep this right around 10 minutes. So, you know, one of the biggest challenges right now is our country opens up, and every state is at a different place in terms of opening, is international travel, right? I mean, now you can listen to the radio. I mean, India is kind of going crazy. There's different flare-ups in other places in Europe, and there is a lot of uncertainty. What are you hearing with respect to, you know, your counterparts over at the European Business Aviation Association and ASBA, the Asian Business Association? What are you hearing in those areas? And when would you, if you had a crystal ball, when would you see some changes with respect to the international, you know, operating environment?
Well, the reality is the coronavirus is a global pandemic. So everyone is being impacted, and it has changed the way the world functions in what used to be a very global market. I think all of us recognize that initially there was a lot of repatriation flying as people were looking to find a place to quarantine. But eventually, we all recognize that international trade, international commerce is kind of fundamental to our economy. We need to get back to that. When we're able to do so is going to depend on a variety of factors. Certainly, we know that the big breakthroughs will be a vaccine and or the development of a herd immunity. All of that seems to be months away. So in the meantime, I think there will be much more tactical approaches to this. Where are hotspots? What are the protocols that are in place? How do you mitigate the risk inherent in some of this? In some ways, it's what aviation is all about. You know, we have always been a group that understands risk and works hard to mitigate unnecessary risk. And so I think that's the way we're approaching this, and it's taking place on both a domestic and an international basis. You know, we'll have, as you know, a lot of restrictions, travel restrictions that impact different states. And we've talked about some of those. So we've got international travel restrictions, but also domestic travel restrictions. And I think the challenge for all of us is, what do we know? And how do we mitigate risk to the greatest extent possible? And I think our industry, whether it is disinfecting airplanes, looking at ways to match crews, the way we approach FBOs, we're learning a lot of great lessons here, Andy.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, hey, we really appreciate your time. This has been incredible. I know it's great information that we're getting in the hands of our aircraft owners and our charter clients, and it's not often that they have the opportunity to hear directly from you. So on behalf of all of our clients and me personally, thank you for taking the time with us here. And I know, you know, Ed and NBAA, they make themselves available. So I mean, whether you're an owner or obviously a managed owner or a charter client, they're a great resource and have a great website, nbaa.org, right, Ed, if I'm not mistaken? Or is it
And you're right, NBAA.org. And we have a special dedicated page slash coronavirus that can provide lots of updates that are really important going forward. So NBAA.org slash coronavirus, tremendous wealth of resources available to anyone interested in mobility and transportation in the COVID-19 environment.
Yeah, crazy times, crazy times. Well, I very much appreciate. It's always great talking to you. I hope I get to see you in person before too long here. But thanks again for your time, and we'll catch up real soon.
Thanks, Andy. All my best to you and your family, your magnificent company. So all the best.
Appreciate it.